Report. It is episode 164. It is June the 1st, 2022. Welcome back in. We are we've got Will's audio, we've got
Yeah,
the
we got
train,
an
we've got
echo. Great.
what a start. What a start. Well, I still got a little bit of the intro to go, Will, so we'll just keep rolling here. We are as always powered by Alaco Fine Wood Floors, family owned and operated for more than 2 decades. Alaco Fine Wood Floors is Nashville and Middle Tennessee's choice for premium quality hardwood floors. Since 1995, Jimmy Alaco and his army of employees have embodied the approach of taking pride in one's craft and providing superior customer service, growing from a one-man shop to a team of 23 professionals who share the founder's passion for quality craftsmanship and customer satisfaction. If you're interested in contacting them, you can find their headquarters at 2505 Winford Avenue in Berry Hill, just a short drive away from the beautiful Geodis Park, the new home of Nashville SC. Or you can call them at 615-356-0303 or log on to alacofinewoodfloors.com. Alaco Fine Wood Floors, serving Middle Tennessee's hardwood flooring needs since 1995. Well, we finally got the full Alaco read in there. Only sponsor. I think we need to give them a little bit more respect and that they deserve. But
It's been changing up a little bit recently, I've noticed. We've been mixing it up, keeping people on their toes.
Yeah, we've been mixing it up a little bit, but that's how we roll here on TDR. And Will, not a ton to get to today, but a couple of meaningful things to get to. We've got the NBA Finals. We're not going to dive into the Celtics and the Warriors by any means. I know you'd like to,
I would
but
love to.
Will, I've never seen anything like this. There are 4 former Vanderbilt basketball players associated with the Boston Celtics in some way. 3 of them are on the roster: Aaron Nesmith, Luke Cornett, and Matt Ryan. And then Steve Ching is actually in the player enhancement. He's on the player enhancement staff, which I didn't even know the NBA had,
No,
but they do.
not really sure what that is, but
but they do. So we'll talk about that. Pretty crazy that's actually happening. 2 of them I had no clue were even associated with Boston. So we'll get into that. And then more importantly, maybe not for you because your Celtics are in the NBA Finals. We'll give credit where credit's due. But we do have a regional to talk about this weekend. And it's obviously a different feel right now than most years for the Vandy boys. But we will preview the Oregon State Regional. And coming up at about 8 o'clock, Robbie Weinstein's going to check in to preview that. But Will, it's been a little bit. I gotta say thank you for filling in last week. That was a hell of a job, man.
thank
Down
God
in
you're back. That's not my forte. I much prefer you to do a majority of the talking, and then just get to give my opinions. That is definitely the preferable way, and I think on people's ears, I think you're a little bit smoother with the transitions than I am going from topic to topic. So that I had to give you credit. I think I said it a couple times. I said next week, thank God Billy is back, and I think that's everyone around is happy you're back. So now that you're done being lazy, doing stuff like graduating and being down in Hoover, we can finally get a normal show going.
Yeah, well, I'm excited. I was actually about to go live from Hoover with you, but number one, the Whistler was in attendance while we would have been recording, and number two, the speakers there are just they're through the roof. It's almost like Vanderbilt Stadium. I think you were talking about how the ETSU game you couldn't like hear yourself think because of how loud the speakers were. That's what they were like in Hoover. So wasn't going to try to go live, but we're back, and I do have a little bit more time to kind of digest and settle in a little bit, and that's what we're going to do. Luckily, it's not right in the middle of football season to where we're not diving into the meat of a football season, but it is baseball season, and this is when Vandy fans start getting excited. Maybe they're not as excited, but we'll talk about the regional with Oregon State, and well, that's where they are, but they'll be facing San Diego on Friday. Before we get to all the breaking news, though, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at @door_report and Instagram @door.report. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our podcast is available on Anchor, iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And while you're at it, give our podcast 5 stars and a review on iTunes. Let's get to breaking news. All right, Will, we're going to start with your Boston Celtics. First off, this has to feel great for you. I know, first and foremost, you're a Vandy fan, but you're also a Celtics fan. So I got to say kind of not congrats yet, but congrats on the run because It's been pretty special. It's been fun to watch them. But more importantly, I have never seen anything like this. I think the only other situation that we could kind of refer back to in this is when the Chicago Bears had, I think it was 5 former Vanderbilt football players, guys like Earl Bennett, Hunter Hillenmeyer. You can go on and on.
Chris Williams,
Chris
Jay
Williams.
Cutler.
Yep.
To be fair,
For,
they were a little bit more of key contributors on that roster, and
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I may have stolen your thunder there, but that
Hey,
is the
I
caveat that
knew.
we got to give. There's a lot that are associated with the team, a lot on the active roster even, but I wouldn't say that they're exactly have been keys to the run. I think that
Yeah.
I don't think Aaron Neesmith has been the only one that's had any minutes of any meeting, and that was very limited time when they were. In a very tough spot with their roster with injuries in that
Yeah.
Heat series. So I don't expect to see any Commodores on the court. So I don't want to get any hopes up. Unless it's in mop-up time, you probably won't see any former Commodores getting actual PT, but they are there. And if hopefully, God willing, I need one of my teams to pull something off, Billy. I need something to restore my faith in sports and fandom. But God willing, they can pull it off. You'll have Neesmith and Cornette with rings, so that'll be actually pretty cool with guys that have actually logged minutes, even though Cornette's have been in those late game situations that have logged minutes on this playoff run. So a little
Is
bit of something to root for, and they can Vanderbilt fans can root behind me in the
Yeah.
NBA. So
I mean, we have to root for the Celtics. There's yes, Neesmith and Cornette will probably not play, but do you see a situation where maybe Williams goes down? Maybe another
well,
guy
with how
gets
the
banged up.
Celtics have been, you never know who is going to play and who is going to go down. You have Marcus Smart has a nagging ankle injury. You have Robert Williams has had a hamstring thing, a knee thing. Horford's 36 years old. You never
Yeah.
know. He's always banged up. The only guys that have been consistently playing, and even Tatum has had a shoulder issue. Brown had hamstring issues. So even though the guys that have been playing relatively consistently, I mean, who knows? The only
Yeah.
guy that I don't think, Billy, is the one that you named, Grant Williams. He's been Mr. Consistency, being able to stay healthy. And Grant Williams was one of those guys that, honestly, when he was playing at UT, you didn't like him because he was on UT, but it's nice to have him on your side. So I'll give Grant Williams a little bit of credit. When Boston drafted him, it was one of those I was like, he's a former UT player, but it's kind of one of those that I was immediately thinking were kind of a diamond in the rough. And
Yeah.
he's worked out that way, and it's nice to root for the flopper instead of be on the other side.
That's
So.
got to be weird. That's got to be weird to be cheering him on now. But I asked that, Will, because with the Warriors and the way they play, I'm not saying Luke Cornett is Mr. Mobile, but who knows? Maybe they want another option there.
It'll be
Probably not.
Neesmith. Neesmith is the guy that's right on that tertiary spot. So if they're backups, like they have Derek White and Peyton Pritchard at the guard
Mhm.
spots for the Celtics there. If they have injuries to multiple post type players, it doesn't allow them to have as much flexibility because they kind of struggle with depth there. They have Tice that comes in at that center position, but behind Brown, Tatum, they don't really have a lot of guys that are like that. So when they do have any injuries to guys like Smart or Williams, it doesn't let them be as flexible, and it leaves the spot open for Neesmith to get a little PT. And when he was in there, he didn't knock down any shots, but he actually had a couple blocks that were some pretty good highlights there that we put out. So he didn't play poorly, but I wouldn't get hopes up as to seeing him. But if there is one guy that you might see Neesmith in some situations, and they like to put him in those last 30-second situations of the quarter when they don't want a guy to pick up a cheap foul. And then also Neesmith is relatively athletic and a good shooter theoretically, even if his professional stats don't necessarily play that out right now. But
Right.
so that's the guy to maybe watch for Vanderbilt fans. But it should be a good series, pretty competitive.
Oh, no doubt about it. And Will, it's crazy because you also got Luke Cornett on the bench, Matt Ryan, and Will. I did a little bit of research.
Notre Dame star.
Yes, former Notre Dame star, former Vandy shooter, player, and then he transferred to UTC down in Chattanooga. And I don't think anyone knew this. I definitely didn't know this 2 weeks ago. He is on the Celtics roster. He, of course, was a solid shooter at Vandy, but after Garland's injury, he wasn't the same player and ended
That's
up
shocking.
transferring.
That's just because I can name off what I thought was the whole roster. So, Billy, you taught me something about the Boston Celtics. So
I
there
mean,
you go.
I couldn't believe it. And well, let's face it, nothing was the same after the Garland injury. But he's actually played in one game this season. It was back on April 10th at Memphis, so he got to play in a state where he's played most of his college basketball. He went 1 for 5 from the 3-point line that night and had a steal. So that's something I don't think I would ever see. Nothing against the guy, but it was just kind of whoa, Matt Ryan, because I saw him on the bench it kind of in that what like before a timeout break, and I swear I wasn't tripping on anything. So it was
Oh,
cool to see that. It was cool to see that Will, um, but at the same time, you also got Steve Chingang. He's a member of the player enhancement staff alongside Evan Brads, the former Belmont Bruin legend. I don't know if you knew that, Will, but
I didn't know.
a lot of Tennessee connections with the Celtics, as
I
you
had no idea
mentioned.
that's what his title was, or that the player enhancement role. But I knew he was associated Evan Brads because my dad went to Belmont, so he
Yeah.
keeps up with those guys that ever make little flashes in the NBA and Evan Brads. And
Oh
I
yeah.
think on the Cavs you have Windler is
Yeah.
still over there,
Dylan
so with
Windler. Yeah.
Garland. So it's weird how these guys from Tennessee kind of lump. So you can
Yeah.
clearly see that I don't know what the connection is, but there is obviously some connection to the local coaches in the Tennessee area, in Rick Bird,
Yeah. There has
formerly
to
there
be.
at Belmont. I mean,
It's
Rick
crazy.
Barnes. So I don't know what it is about Boston to Tennessee, and I don't know what it is about Cleveland to Tennessee, but those two places seem to have some sort of connection.
Yeah, if you live in the state of Tennessee and aren't rooting for the Celtics, I don't know what you're doing because the team they're
Been saying
playing
that
is
for
from.
years, Billy.
Yeah, I mean the team they're playing is also from California, Golden State. Not not the most aesthetically pleasing place to go, at least right now. But the Boston, of course, is. I mean, they're on a run like no other. Like I know we don't want to talk about the Celtics as much right now, but credit to the Celtics, Will. Credit to
Yeah,
your
I mean, I
Celtics.
can go on about the Celtics, but I know that people probably want to hear us go into the baseball preview
Yeah.
with the upcoming matchup coming up on Friday. So I don't know if you have the ability to flash one of those fancy
Oh,
titles
I forgot
up
the.
across the screen. There, yeah, there we go.
I
Come on
forgot
now,
the one
Billy.
for. That's
What are
what we
we?
had for
Yeah,
Vandy
what
Hope
are we even
Celtics.
paying for this service for if you forget to use the graphics? What are we even doing
Oh
here?
man,
Give the
yeah,
people what
I'm
they
telling
want,
you.
Billy.
Well,
Come on.
I'm rusty. I'm rusty, man.
There
But
we go.
there it is.
Corvallis Regional
All right,
Trivia. All right.
the Corvallis, Oregon regional preview. It's time to talk about the Vandy boys, Will. And I know you're going to get to some of your gambling odds, and then we'll get to our predictions. But I want to just kind of start here with a few notes. Vanderbilt's going to play Friday, 3 o'clock on ESPNU. It's the Toreros and the Commodores. It's not a bad nickname matchup. First road regional for Vandy since 2018, and Tim Corbin's teams are actually 4-8 in road regionals. That's pretty damn good. But at the same time, we'll see if this group can flip the switch. It's a pretty big switch to flip. They have not looked good at all. They looked they looked like they were sleepwalking through Hoover, and being there in person. Will, I think baseball is a sport where if you're there in person, you really get to fully realize what's actually going on, what's happening, who's communicating with who, gestures, mannerisms, things like that. And you know, I was shocked. I was shocked at what I saw in Hoover, Will, and it was kind of a time for Vanderbilt to flip the switch after getting swept by LSU, but they they're not able to, and now they got to flip another switch, and so the switch hasn't been flipped yet. Now, we thought they had turned a corner after beating Arkansas and Fayetteville. Turns out Arkansas is not even a 1 seed. They're not hosting a regional. They're a 2 seed. So it's been a really interesting and quite frankly weird past few weeks for Vanderbilt. It's been a weird season, but at the same time, you've still got Tim Corbin in the dugout. You've still got a team that has made 16 straight regionals and not hosting, but they've made 16 straight NCAA tournament appearances. And I'm not picking Vandy. I'm not saying they're going to win this regional, but I'm just saying at this time of year in the month of June, Vanderbilt's had a little bit of success, and so Vanderbilt has to prove. I have to see it before I believe it with this team right now. Will I think you'd agree, but at the same time, there's not a lot to go off of, especially recently in the last couple weeks with this team.
I mean, you said you got to see it to believe it. I mean, yeah, that's it, it's past the point of flipping a switch. I mean, we're there now. this is when it's supposed to have already been flipped. That was supposed to happen in that LSU series. Arkansas was supposed to be the jumping off point, and clearly they're not just not playing. They're not just plateauing.
Yeah.
They're getting worse than where I think they were about 3-4 series ago in the SEC. They were you were kind of feeling good. 4 of the last 5 after the Arkansas. It wasn't just the Arkansas series. It was everything. It was the MTSU midweek game. They then came out and dominated and won 7-2 and played good baseball during. And then that Ole Miss game, they snuck out a win in that first round. It wasn't like they came out and absolutely dominated. And then it kind of just felt like, okay, now we've locked up at least a 2 seed. We're probably not going to be a 1 seed anyway, and just mail it in after that. You didn't get that feeling. They barely got by Ole Miss to begin with. But it is interesting because we talked about that this series or this regional in Corvallis. I know that me and you and probably a lot of Vanderbilt fans out there were not thrilled to see Oregon State in the same region. It's kind of when you get the preview in basketball and you see that number 1 or you see a number 2 seed or a number 1 seed in your region and you're like, are you serious? Does it have to be that team? I mean, outside of Tennessee, they are literally the one team that I didn't want to see be in the same region with, and the gambling odds played that out. And that's what I want to get into to start out here is the gambling odds, which right now, Vanderbilt will start out with their overall odds to win the College World Series right now, and all of this is according to DraftKings Sportsbook. So that's where I pulled mine from. But so you'll see slight variations. They're at plus 3,500 right now, tied for 13th overall to win that College World Series. So it's pretty high expectations in the odds, and it's also just because there are just some regions that Tennessee. I mean, their odds are insane. Tennessee is plus 250. They are plus 250 overall against Everett to win the overall.
Well, let me ask you this, Will. There's the question out there: Tennessee or the field? As
I'm taking the field.
I mean, I'm taking the field too. But have you seen anything like basketball in terms of betting? I'm not a heavy bettor, of course. I do it a little bit, but at the same time, like basketball, have you seen something
Gonzaga
like this where there's this big
Gonzaga
of a favorite?
This year was nearly even money to win that championship.
Really?
And that was probably the most insane thing that I've ever seen. It was Gonzaga versus the field in a one-off setting in that, and I think they were around that 200, plus 200. I could be wrong.
And who won it? The field won. The field won.
Yeah, so that's a lot of teams. It's a lot of games, but the number 2 team in the gambling odds is Oregon State at plus 900. So you have Tennessee at plus 250, and you have Oregon State at plus 900. And I can tell you who is actually saying, "Are you kidding me?" Is San Diego. San Diego is sitting there like they won their conference. They got over that hump. They haven't been here since 2013 when they had Chris Bryant there. Mm-hmm. And they get into a region and they have 2 true blue bloods
they get stuck
in their region.
Vandy
and not just
Oregon
that, they have an underachieving Vanderbilt team this year, I would say, compared to the talent level and expectations. And you have an Oregon State team that I would not say is underachieved and is an extremely talented blue blood program team.
And you're playing at their stadium.
And they're and you look at the odds and it plays out that way. Now, some of that has to do with Vanderbilt's. The rest of the region in Corvallis isn't necessarily the toughest. I wouldn't say that San Diego is one of the strongest 3 seeds. But the rest of the odds for Vanderbilt, so they have the matchup against San Diego, and is it Toreros? Is that the correct pronunciation there? Vanderbilt is actually minus 165 against them, so not a very heavy favorite on Friday rolling out, but they are plus 185 in the region. So to be the region winner, they are plus 185. Obviously, the favorite there is Oregon State, but they're really not as much of a favorite as you would expect with how high they are in that overall College World Series. They're minus 140 to win the region. So the betting odds, the betting odds are telling you is that Vegas expects whoever comes out of this region to win their super region and make it to Omaha. That's the expectation. So you can see how that matches up overall with the rest of the regions. I don't have the bracket out in front of me, but this is an extremely strong region, and I don't think that me and you are exactly thrilled to be sitting there with Oregon State, who Vanderbilt has a history against,
Yeah.
sitting there going into postseason play in a Vanderbilt team that's a little bit reminiscent of some teams that have been bounced out early in the past.
Yeah, well, it was really interesting watching the selection show. I don't know if you were able to watch it on Monday. Of course, it's not at the best time, noon on a Monday, but I was going through it, and I was like, okay, we're at the Louisville Regional. This is going to be Vandy here. They had Michigan up there first as the 3 seed. I was like, this is going to be Vandy. Nope, no Vandy. And then the North Carolina Regional came. I was like, oh, this is going to be Vandy. They're going to be the 2 seed here. Nope. And then the Virginia Tech Regional came, and they just kept kind of getting bounced off of that, and I was like, okay, literally in the back of my mind, I was like, they didn't screw Vandy, did they? They didn't just take them off. Now I knew that wasn't going to happen, but deep down, I mean, back of
And
your head,
getting
it's
to
always there. But at the same time, you get to the end and you're paired with Oregon State, and you're like, okay, it's going to be Oregon State because you see Oregon State pop up, and you're like, Vanderbilt's going to be the 2 seed here. But Will, it's on San Diego. You mentioned San Diego. They are a really, really good 3 seed. They might be there. I think they're up there actually with one of the better 3 seeds. I mean, they won their conference. They lead the WCC in batting average, on base percentage, slugging percentage, and home runs. They took 2 out of 3 from Oregon in the regular season. They beat Gonzaga twice on the way to winning the WCC tournament. So unlike Vanderbilt,
I wasn't meaning to bash them, but it's kind
yeah,
of when you do the preview and you're previewing like a number 9 seed or a number 10 seed, and you're like, okay, every team that's in here's resume is
right,
incredible. Like
yeah,
unless you're a really high seed, unless you're a 4 and a team that snuck in through an automatic bid, every team you can name off like all of this list of things. So I wasn't meaning to
yeah,
dismiss them. They're still a good baseball team. They beat Gonzaga in that 11 inning game in the
yeah.
WCC championship, but I wouldn't say they're the team that scares me the most, even though they're
No,
more than capable of
yeah,
putting
yeah.
Vanderbilt out,
No, and
or at
I'm
least
not.
beating them.
Yeah, I'm not trying to overhype them or anything, but I'm just, they can't. If Vandy takes them lightly, they're going to lose in that first round game. Plain and simple. So, but on the other end, if Vanderbilt's able to beat San Diego, that sets up a Saturday night game with Oregon State, and Oregon State's definitely saving their ace lefty, Cooper Jerpy, on Saturday night. I don't know why they would pitch him against New Mexico State on Friday, but so that sets up. Will, if Vanderbilt can get to Saturday, now you got to beat Oregon State twice. That's the that's kind of the I think scary thing for Vandy fans. You got to beat a team that you just talked about their odds for the national title. You got to beat that team twice. Go do that, and then you'll move on to the Super. So,
Yeah, no
well,
problem.
I think we are so, as Vanderbilt people, we're so used to seeing Vanderbilt kind of not a cakewalk, but an easier regional. They we saw
We're used to
last
them
year.
being the favorite. We're used to
Yeah,
going in. We're not
I
used
mean,
to being the team
and
talked about in
this,
the plus numbers.
yeah, no, and this draw was probably one of their worst draws ever in the NCAA tournament. I don't remember. I know they went on the road at NC State. I think it was back in 2012 or 13. I think it might have been, but this is one of their worst draws, Will. So, but the question is for this team, how much can change in 3 or 4 days after that break? After getting bounced from the SEC tournament, Corbin usually gives the guys a couple days off to rest, reset, relax, and get back, to the facility and get to work. But you're flying all the way across the country. I know these guys. I'm not saying I know them personally, but you had Virginia Tech right over there. I mean, that's short flight. I mean, it probably might have even been able to take a bus in North Carolina, but they got sent up to the West Coast. So where's the mindset? Where's the mindset of this team right now? I'll be interested to see, and it starts with San Diego. I've heard Vandy fans talking about, oh, we don't match up well with Oregon State. Oregon State is this and that. You guys are forgetting they got to play San Diego 1st.
Mm-hmm.
There's a
Yeah,
matchup with San Diego first.
and how this team has been, Billy. I mean, there's no looking past any teams. But what I wanted to say is why, not a why, because there were obviously a ton of factors with the committee, but sending Vanderbilt out to the West Coast and you're like, what the hell? Why? Is you look at the seeding, 6 of the top 16 teams in their region are SEC teams. And then you look at that, including the number 2 seeds. So top 2 seeds, 9 of the 16 regions, there's an SEC team as a top 2 seed. So that really limits you on what you're
You
going to
got
be
to
able to
spread
do
them out.
seeding wise, because you can't have multiple SEC teams in that same region in the 1 and 2 spots. So that's part of the reason I looked at that and said, I don't even know if this is necessarily where Vanderbilt seeds out when you would put it everywhere, but I think
Right.
Vanderbilt had a ton of flexibility. I think that people wouldn't have questioned if Vanderbilt was seeded kind of in that top tier of number 2 seeds, and I don't think people would have questioned if they were seeded at the bottom tier of those number 2 seeds with how up and down they've been and how they closed out the year. So I think Vanderbilt, more than a lot of other teams, was very flexible in where the committee could place them. And unfortunately for Vanderbilt, that means a long flight out to the West Coast when these other teams in New Mexico and San Diego, New Mexico State and San Diego, do not have to worry about that long of
Yeah.
traveling. But one dude that is going to be returning close to home, Spencer Jones. He actually played baseball in high school about 45 minutes down the road, and I might butcher the pronunciation, La Costa Canyon High
There it is.
School.
There it is.
45 minutes down the road.
Another
From
guy.
San Diego, or not returning home, but he's playing against a school in San
Yeah.
Diego that he played 45 minutes down the road from. So I would equate that, if you played baseball in Nashville, it would be the equivalent of playing against Tennessee Tech,
Right.
about that distance, or Austin Peay. So
Yeah.
very familiar school for him, I would say, and pretty cool as he's
Yeah.
from relatively around that area on the West Coast.
Another example, Will, is Carter Young. He's from Selah, Washington. So there's a few of those guys. I know Carter and Spencer are two of them. I don't know if you know any others, but there's kind of a chunk of Vandy players that are kind of going home for what it's worth, but their families are able to travel a lot easier because a lot of them probably aren't able or even financially able to make the trip all the way to Nashville. I mean, it's not an I don't think I've never been. I don't think I've ever been west of Missouri. So it's a trip I've never even thought of.
I'm Texas.
Yeah.
Dallas, Texas is
You got
probably
me
the
there.
furthest west that I've been. So I got you beat. We're not very well traveled here, Billy. We might have to get out to Hawaii there in next
might
football
have
season.
to.
Let's expand. Let's get cultured. Let's get that going.
We got to get cultured
We
here.
need a few more sponsors for that. So
Yeah.
email us at doorreport@gmail.com for sponsorships. We are looking for a sponsor to fly us out to Hawaii for Vanderbilt's week 2 game against the Rainbow Warriors.
We're looking for an all expenses paid trip to Hawaii.
Yeah, so if anybody knows of any sponsors that are sending out all expense paid trips to Hawaii, let us know. We will record podcasts. I will shamelessly wear any product that you have. But please, anyone out there, reach out. I don't think it's going to work, Billy. I don't know about you. I'm not feeling confident.
I'm not feeling great either, Will. But hey, it's worth a shot. I don't know if Jimmy would, Jimmy Alaco. Maybe I'll give him a text about that.
Yeah.
But Will,
a little more expensive.
Running out of time here, though, we got to get to Robbie Weinstein. But Carter Holton's going to pitch on Friday. Corbin said this morning on 560 WNSR, and then on Saturday it'll be Chris McIlvain. So we'll see, Will. Short episode, but we'll have a big recap of this
and
regional.
then the expected starter for San Diego, Bryson Mouts, left-hander, 9-2, 4.09 ERA, 124 strikeouts, 6'3", 190 left-hander. So plug that in before we swing over to Robbie here.
Will, you're that's perfect. I forgot to throw that in. I don't, like I said in the tweet, Will, I don't know what I'd do without you. I really don't. That does it here for a short episode 164. We got Robbie Weinstein coming up next to preview the Corvallis Regional.